My name is Megan Reynolds, 28, and I watched my sister's wedding through a viral video where her groom slapped her across the face. After years of growing apart, Amber excluded me from her big day, claiming I was toxic and jealous of her relationship. I knew something was wrong with Jake from the moment I met him, but no one would listen. Now that same intuition that made me an outsider had been vindicated in the most horrific way possible. Before I dive into this mess, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you want more stories about family drama turned redemption. Trust me, this one goes places you won't believe. Growing up, Amber and I were inseparable. Just 3 years apart, we shared a bedroom with twin beds pressed against opposite walls, covered in matching floral comforters that Mom picked out. We spent summers building elaborate forts in the backyard of our suburban Boston home, winters sledding down Carter Hill until our fingers turned numb. I looked up to her, my older sister, with the perfect blonde curls and easy confidence. She protected me from playground bullies and taught me how to apply mascara without clumping. But something shifted during our teen years. The closeness morphed into competition, the admiration into resentment. Small disagreements exploded into shouting matches that echoed through our 2-story colonial. Dad would shake his head and retreat to his workshop in the garage, while Mom tried unsuccessfully to mediate. Then came the divorce. I was 14, Amber 17. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies, no screaming fights or broken dishes. Just a quiet dissolution of a 20-year marriage that had gradually cooled into polite indifference. Mom moved to Arizona with her new boyfriend, a chiropractor named Dennis, whom she'd met at a conference. Dad stayed in the house, but became a ghost of himself, working longer hours and saying less when he was home. The divorce changed us both, but in different ways. I acted out, skipping classes, sneaking out with friends, getting caught with cigarettes in my backpack. Amber went the opposite direction. Her grades improved from good to perfect. She joined more clubs, volunteered at the hospital, became student council president. While I was getting detention, she was getting early acceptance to Boston University. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the refrain from teachers, neighbors, and especially Dad. Each comparison drove another wedge between us. The summer before my junior year, I spent weeks perfecting my college admission essay. The prompt asked about overcoming challenges, and I wrote about navigating my parents' divorce, finding my own voice amid the chaos. I left the draft on our shared laptop. 2 months later, I discovered Amber had used the same concept for her scholarship applications. Only her version was more polished, more poignant. When I confronted her, she dismissed it as coincidence. "It's not my fault we went through the same experience," she said, rolling her eyes. "Besides, yours was so melodramatic. I just made it better." Then there was Tyler Mackenzie, my first serious boyfriend. We dated for 8 months during my senior year until he broke my heart 2 weeks before prom. 3 months later, I saw Instagram photos of him and Amber at a concert. When I called her furious, she acted surprised by my reaction. "You were done with him," she said casually. "And we just happened to reconnect when I was home from college." "It's not a big deal, Meg." But it was a big deal. It was a pattern. Amber had a way of taking things that mattered to me and making them her own, all while making me feel childish for being upset. And our family enabled it. During Christmas dinner my freshman year of college, I tried bringing up the Tyler situation again, hoping for support from Dad or our grandparents. "Honestly, Megan, that's ancient history," Dad sighed. "Can we just have a nice holiday for once without your drama?" Amber smiled sympathetically across the table. "Maybe this is something we should discuss privately," she suggested, coming off as the mature one yet again. After college, I moved to Chicago for a marketing position, grateful for the distance. Amber stayed in Boston, working her way up at a prestigious consulting firm. Our communication dwindled to holiday calls and occasional text exchanges. Each conversation felt like walking through a minefield of unresolved issues. I tried repairing our relationship several times. When I visited Boston for a friend's wedding, I invited Amber for brunch. We spoke about surface-level topics: her promotion, my new apartment, a movie we'd both seen. But when I attempted to address our past conflicts, she checked her watch and suddenly remembered a meeting she couldn't miss. "Not everything needs to be analyzed to death, Meg," she said, dropping cash on the table for her half of the bill. "Sometimes people just grow apart. But families aren't supposed to grow apart so easily." With each rejected olive branch, I felt the loss more deeply. The sister who once knew all my secrets had become almost a stranger. I missed her despite everything, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someday she might need me even if she couldn't admit it. I first heard about Jake Wilson through a brief text message from Amber in February 2022, dating someone new. His name's Jake. It's going really well. Over the following months, Jake appeared in her social media posts. A tall, conventionally handsome man with dark hair and a confident smile. They posed in front of expensive restaurants at charity galas on his boat. Amber looked happy, at least in the carefully filtered photographs. I sent appropriate responses. "You guys look great, and glad you're happy," while ignoring the slight sting of not being introduced to someone who was clearly becoming important in her life. 6 months later, another text arrived with a photo of a massive diamond ring. "Jake proposed last night. We're getting married in the spring." I called, immediately surprised by both the news and the rushed timeline. "Wow, that's fast. Congratulations. Tell me everything about him." "He's amazing," Amber gushed. "He owns a real estate development company. He's taking me to Greece next month. His family has this incredible summer house on Cape Cod." She described his accomplishments, his possessions, the impressive people he knew, but nothing about who he actually was. "I'm happy for you," I said carefully. "When can I meet him?" "Maybe at Thanksgiving. We're having dinner at Dad's this year. Jake's organizing everything." That November, I flew back to Boston and arrived at our childhood home, now renovated with what appeared to be Jake's influence. Sleek, modern furniture replacing Dad's comfortable old pieces. Amber greeted me with an air kiss, introducing Jake with a nervous energy I'd never seen in her before. "Jake, this is my little sister Megan. Megan, this is my fiancé, Jake Wilson." Jake gave me a firm handshake and a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The troublemaker sister, right? Amber's told me all about you." Throughout dinner, I observed their interaction closely. Jake dominated the conversation, frequently cutting Amber off to clarify her stories or speak for her. When she reached for a second glass of wine, his hand briefly touched hers. "Babe, remember you said you wanted to watch your calories before the wedding," he said, with a tight smile. She withdrew her hand immediately. When Amber excused herself to use the bathroom, Jake casually picked up her phone when it buzzed with a notification, checking it before setting it down again. Later, when she mentioned a potential promotion that would require more travel, he laughed. "As if you'd have time with all the wedding planning and getting the new house ready. Besides, you know I need you at my company events." Dad seemed oblivious, clearly impressed by Jake's business acumen and the expensive scotch he'd brought as a gift. But I couldn't ignore the subtle way Amber seemed to shrink around him, constantly checking his reactions before speaking, laughing too loudly at his jokes. After dinner, I found Amber alone in the kitchen and seized the opportunity. "He seems intense," I ventured carefully. She stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I don't know, it just seems like he has a lot of opinions about your life." "He cares about me," she snapped. "He wants what's best for us. I just want to make sure you're happy." "Of course I'm happy. I'm marrying an incredible man who adores me. Not everyone wants to be perpetually single and finding themselves like you." The conversation spiraled from there. Every concern I raised was met with defensiveness. When I mentioned how he checked her phone, she accused me of spying on them. When I pointed out how he spoke over her, she said I was nitpicking because I was jealous of their relationship. "You've always done this," she hissed, keeping her voice low so the men in the living room wouldn't hear. "You can't stand when something good happens to me." "That's not fair, Amber. I just want to make sure this is right for you. You've only known him for—" "This is exactly why we've grown apart," she interrupted. "You're toxic, Megan. Always have been." Jake says people who try to come between couples are usually projecting their own unhappiness. By the time I left Boston, the rift between us had widened into a chasm. Jake had convinced Amber that my concerns were manifestations of jealousy and bitterness. Our final conversation before I returned to Chicago ended with Amber telling me I needed to get my life together before judging hers. Over the following months, Amber's social media posts became increasingly curated. Picture-perfect scenes of her and Jake traveling, renovating their new townhouse, attending exclusive events. But in rare candid shots posted by mutual friends, I noticed how her smile seemed strained, how she constantly checked Jake's expression before reacting to anything. I tried calling several times, but our conversations were brief and superficial. Jake was often in the background, and Amber would quickly find reasons to hang up. My sister, once fiercely independent, was disappearing into Jake's shadow, and there seemed to be nothing I could do to reach her. In January, I saw a save the date post on Amber's Instagram. We've set the date, May 17th, 2023. Can't wait to marry my best friend at the Sinclair estate. I waited for my invitation, checking the mail each day with growing anxiety. When nothing arrived by March, I casually texted Amber about booking flights. Her response was delayed but devastating. We're keeping the wedding very small, mostly Jake's business connections and close family. I stared at my phone, confused. Aren't I close family? 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her reply came through. Things have been complicated between us. Jake thinks it's best not to have negative energy on our special day. The words hit like a physical blow. Jake thinks. Not Amber thinks. Not we think. Jake thinks. I called our cousin Lindsay, who had always been close to both of us. Did you get an invitation to Amber's wedding? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Yeah, about 2 weeks ago, she said, then paused. Wait, you didn't. Apparently I'm not invited. That's insane, you're her sister. Jake decided I have negative energy. I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. That doesn't sound like Amber at all, Lindsay said softly. She always said you were the person who knew her best. That night, I cycled through emotions like stations on a radio. Hurt gave way to anger, which morphed into indignation, then settled into a hollow sadness. I drafted and deleted a dozen messages to Amber, ranging from pleading to furious. In the end, I sent nothing. The exclusion from Amber's wedding wasn't just a missing invitation. It was the severing of our last familial connection. The sister who had once shared my bedroom, my secrets, and my history had chosen a man she barely knew over me. The realization left me reeling. 2 weeks later, I broke down during a session with my therapist, Dr. Patel. She's making a huge mistake, I sobbed. He's controlling and manipulative, and no one can see it but me. Dr. Patel handed me a tissue. What evidence do you have of his controlling behavior? I recounted everything I'd observed during Thanksgiving. The phone checking the interruptions, the subtle criticisms disguised as concern. Those are concerning behaviors, she agreed. But ultimately, Amber is an adult making her own choices. Bad choices, I muttered. Perhaps. But sometimes people need to discover that for themselves. She leaned forward. The question is, how are you going to care for yourself through this? We worked on establishing boundaries, processing my grief over the lost relationship, and finding ways to remain open to reconciliation without sacrificing my self-respect. But the pain lingered, a constant ache beneath my day-to-day functioning. A week before the wedding, I made one last attempt to reach out. I respect your decision about the wedding, I wrote, but I want you to know I'm always here for you no matter what. I miss you and I love you. Amber's response was brief and cold. I think it's best if you're not there. Jake and I are starting our life together and we need to focus on positive relationships. I hope you understand. I understood perfectly. My sister was gone, replaced by whoever Jake wanted her to be. On the day of the wedding, social media exploded with photos from the lavish ceremony. Dad looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo. Amber in a designer gown that seemed more Jake's taste than hers. Sleek and modern, rather than the romantic style she'd always admired. Jake surrounded by men in expensive suits, all wearing the same practiced smile. In every photo, Amber's eyes held a look I recognized from our childhood. The same expression she'd worn when lying to our parents about broken curfews or damaged belongings. A smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I shut off my phone and took myself to a movie, then dinner, then a long walk along Lake Michigan. My friends had offered to come over to distract me, but I needed to process this alone. The sister who had taught me to ride a bike, who had held my hand during our parents' divorce, who had once been my closest friend in the world, had married a man who had systematically isolated her from me. And I had no idea if I would ever get her back. That night, I wrote a letter I knew I would never send. I poured out every memory, every hurt, every worry. Then I sealed it in an envelope, tucked it into my journal, and tried to accept that some relationships can't be saved by one person alone, no matter how much you wish they could. 2 weeks after the wedding, on a rainy Tuesday morning, my phone began buzzing incessantly during a client meeting. 12 missed calls, 23 text messages, all within the span of an hour. As soon as I could step away, I checked the notifications, my stomach knotting with dread. The first message was from Lindsay. "Oh my God, have you seen this? Call me as soon as possible." Attached was a link to a TikTok video. With trembling fingers, I tapped the link. The video, already at 3 million views, showed Amber and Jake at their wedding reception. They were standing near the cake table, Jake's arm around Amber's waist, in what initially looked like an affectionate pose. But his grip was tight, his knuckles white against the ivory of her dress. Amber was speaking to an elderly woman, our grandmother, smiling that practiced smile I'd noticed in the photos. Then Jake leaned down, whispering something in her ear. Amber's smile faltered. She whispered back, trying to maintain the facade of the happy couple. Whatever she said triggered something in Jake. His face transformed charm, vanishing into rage in an instant. And then it happened. His hand swinging up, connecting with Amber's cheek with an audible crack. The video captured gasps from nearby guests, Amber's hand flying to her face, tears springing to her eyes. It ended abruptly, the person filming apparently rushing to intervene. My office bathroom became my refuge as I struggled to breathe to process what I'd just witnessed. My worst fears confirmed in the most public, humiliating way possible. My sister assaulted by her new husband at their wedding reception in front of everyone they knew. The other messages flooded in. Friends asking if I'd seen it, if Amber was okay, if I needed anything. News outlets requesting comments. Distant relatives expressing shock. Even my mother, who'd skipped the wedding due to scheduling conflicts with Dennis, called from Arizona. "Did you know?" she demanded. "Did you know he was like this?" I tried to warn her, I whispered. No one would listen. My first instinct was to call Amber, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I texted her, "I saw the video. Are you safe? Please call me." No response. I tried Dad next. "Have you talked to Amber? Is she okay?" His response came hours later. "She says it's being blown out of proportion. They're handling it privately. Don't get involved. Don't get involved." My sister's abuser had been caught on camera, and I was supposed to stand back and do nothing. By evening, the video had spread to every major social media platform. Number Jake Wilson was trending. His development company had issued a statement about a personal matter and request for privacy. Commenters were calling for boycotts of his businesses for criminal charges. And somewhere in the middle of this storm was Amber, alone with him. My phone rang. A journalist from a Boston news station. "Miss Reynolds, we understand you weren't at your sister's wedding. Can you tell us why? Were there previous incidents of violence?" The opportunity to say, "I told you so," dangled before me like forbidden fruit. I could validate all my suspicions, position myself as the prescient sister who saw the danger signs. But what would that accomplish beyond adding to Amber's humiliation? "No comment," I said, hanging up. More calls came. More texts. More opportunities to insert myself into the narrative. I declined them all. Instead, I booked a flight to Boston for the following morning. I had no plan beyond getting to my sister, making sure she was safe. The vindication I might have expected to feel was non-existent, replaced by cold fear. Because behind that viral moment of violence was the terrifying question: what happened when the cameras stopped rolling? What happened when Jake got Amber home away from witnesses? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the video, noticing new details with each viewing. The way Jake's friends barely reacted, suggesting they'd seen this behavior before. The way my father stared at his plate in the background, unwilling to intervene. The look in Amber's eyes, not surprise, but resignation. This wasn't the first time. It was just the first time it happened in public. By morning, the video had 30 million views. Jake's company had removed him from their website. Wedding guests were giving anonymous interviews about tensions they'd observed throughout the day. As I packed my bag for Boston, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stay out of this if you know what's good for you and your sister." Then another, "This is a private matter between husband and wife." I screenshotted the messages, hands shaking, then blocked the number. Whether it was Jake himself or one of his friends, the message was clear. The man who had hit my sister in public was now trying to intimidate me from a distance. It only strengthened my resolve. I had failed to protect Amber once by not pushing harder, by accepting her rejection. I wouldn't fail her again. Landing in Boston, I tried calling Amber again. Still, no answer. I called Dad, who claimed he hadn't heard from her since the day after the video went viral. I even tried Jake's company posing as a potential client but was told Mr. Wilson was on leave. My Uber driver recognized me from the family resemblance once I mentioned my destination neighborhood. "You're her sister, aren't you?" Man, that video was rough. "Your poor sister." I nodded, throat tight. Have they been talking about it a lot here? It's all over local news. Guy's family has major connections in the city. There's rumors his ex filed charges against him a couple years back, but it got buried somehow. That was news to me. I made a mental note to look into it later. I checked into a hotel a few blocks from Amber and Jake's townhouse in Back Bay. From my window, I could almost see their building. A sleek, multi-million-dollar property Jake had apparently gotten a deal on through his connections. I spent the afternoon sending Amber messages, texts, emails, even a Facebook message, though she rarely used it anymore. "I'm in Boston. I just want to know you're safe. Please contact me. No judgment, no I told you so. Just want to help. I love you. I'm worried. Please let me know you're okay." Nothing. As evening approached, I decided to risk going to their home directly. The worst she could do was turn me away, and at least then I'd know she was alive. I walked the short distance, rehearsing what to say, how to be supportive without being pushy. The townhouse was dark when I arrived, no signs of life behind the elegant curtains. I pressed the doorbell anyway, waiting in the cool spring air. No response. I tried again, then knocked firmly. Nothing. A neighbor walking her dog passed by, giving me a curious look. "They haven't been around," she offered. "Not since that awful video. Reporters were here for days." "Do you know where they went?" I asked. She shook her head. "The car service picked them up late at night 3 days ago. Luggage and everything." Had Jake taken her somewhere isolated? Was she even able to leave freely? My anxiety spiraled as I thanked the neighbor and retreated to my hotel, feeling helpless. Back in my room, I tried a different approach. I sent Amber a simple text, "I'm here for you no matter what." At 2:17 a.m., my phone rang, jolting me from restless sleep. Unknown number. "Hello," I answered, instantly alert. "Meg," the voice was barely audible, hoarse from crying. "Amber, is that you? Where are you? Are you okay?" A sob broke through the line. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." "Don't apologize. Just tell me where you are. Let me help you." He took my phone. "I'm using the hotel landline." Her voice shook. "He finally fell asleep, but I don't have much time." "What hotel? I'll come get you right now." "The Warwick downtown. Room 842. She lowered her voice further. "Meg, I'm scared. This wasn't the first time. It's been happening since we got engaged." My heart pounded against my ribs. "I'm coming right now. Pack whatever you need." "You don't understand. He'll come after me. He has connections." He said no one would believe me, that he'd make me look crazy. "The whole world saw what he did, Amber. You're not alone anymore." I was already pulling on clothes, searching for my shoes. "Has he hurt you since the wedding?" Her silence answered my question. "Why did you exclude me from the wedding?" I asked, unable to help myself. "I could have helped you." Another sob. "He said you'd see through him. After Thanksgiving, he convinced me you were trying to sabotage us because you were jealous. He isolated me from everyone who might notice what was happening." Her voice broke. "You were right about him, Meg. You were the only one who saw it. And I chose him over you." "That doesn't matter now," I said firmly, though her words soothed a wound I'd carried for months. "All that matters is getting you out safely. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Wait for me in the lobby if you can." "I love you, Meg. I'm so sorry." "I love you too. Always have, always will." I grabbed my purse and jacket, then paused. Something about this felt too easy. Jake had been controlling enough to cut me out of the wedding, to isolate Amber from anyone who questioned him. Would he really get drunk and pass out conveniently the same night I arrived in Boston? I pulled out my laptop and searched for the Warwick Hotel. The website showed a luxury property, marble floors, chandeliers, elegant furnishings. Not the kind of place with landline phones in the rooms. Most hotels had phased those out years ago, especially high-end ones. My blood ran cold. I dialed the number back, but it went to an automated system for a prepaid phone. Not a hotel landline at all. I immediately called an Uber and headed for Jake and Amber's townhouse instead of the hotel. Either Amber had been confused about her location, possible if she was traumatized, or she'd been forced to make that call. Either way, I needed to get to her, and their home seemed the most logical place to start. The townhouse was still dark when I arrived, but this time I noticed a faint blue glow from what must be the living room. A television, perhaps. Someone was home. I approached the door cautiously, then knocked firmly. No response. I knocked again, louder. "Amber, it's Megan. Please open the door." A shuffling sound came from inside, then silence. I pressed my ear against the door. "Amber, I know you're in there. I'm not leaving until I see that you're okay." Finally, the lock clicked and the door opened a few inches. Amber stood in the shadows, her face half hidden. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Let me in," I said gently. "Please." She hesitated, then stepped back, allowing me to enter. When she moved into the light of the hallway, I had to stifle a gasp. My beautiful, confident sister looked like a ghost of herself. She'd lost at least 15 pounds since I'd last seen her, her collarbones jutting sharply beneath her oversized sweatshirt. Her cheekbone was discolored with a fading bruise. Not from the slap in the video, but newer. Her eyes were sunken, rimmed with dark circles. "What did he do to you?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Amber hugged herself, eyes darting toward the staircase. "He's not here. He went to his parents' place in the Cape. Said I needed time to get my story straight before he came back." I guided her to the living room where the television played mutely. A home renovation show, the kind of normal, peaceful content that contrasted sharply with the tension filling the room. "That call earlier," I began. "The hotel. He made me," she whispered. "He showed up after you texted. He has my phone. He sees everything. He made me call you from a burner phone, told me what to say. Said if I didn't convince you to go to that hotel, there'd be consequences." "Why, what's at the hotel?" "His friends." She shuddered. "They were going to talk some sense into you. Make you understand this is a private matter." The calculated malice of it made my skin crawl. Not content with abusing, my sister Jake had tried to lure me into a potential trap as well. "We need to get you out of here," I said firmly. "Pack a bag. You're coming with me." "I can't," Amber replied, voice breaking. "He'll find me. He always does." "Not this time," I promised, pulling out my phone. "First, I'm recording everything you tell me about what he's done. Evidence. Then we're getting you somewhere safe." As Amber began to speak haltingly at first, then in a flood of horrific details, I recorded every word. The isolation had begun subtly, suggestions about which friends were really supportive of their relationship. Then, controlling her schedule, her clothing choices, her diet. Financial control followed. Joint accounts he monitored obsessively, questioning every purchase. The first physical incident came after she'd spoken too long to a male colleague at a company event. A shove that he'd immediately apologized for, blamed on too much champagne. "I should have left then," she said, wiping tears. "But he was so sorry, so loving afterward. He sent flowers for a week. Scheduled couples therapy, though, we only went twice." The abuse had escalated gradually. A grabbed arm leaving bruises. Accidental bumps that weren't accidents at all. After they were engaged, the mask slipped more frequently. "The wedding day was a nightmare," she continued. "Nothing was right according to him. My hair, my vows, the way I greeted his business partners. He cornered me in the bridal suite before the ceremony and told me if I embarrassed him, I'd regret it. And the slap, what triggered that I asked. Grandma asked when we were planning to have children. I said we were going to wait a couple of years, but Jake had told his family we'd start trying immediately. He felt contradicted, humiliated. You know the rest." A noise outside interrupted her. A car door slamming. Through the window, I saw Jake striding toward the house, face tight with anger. "He wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow," Amber whispered, panic rising in her voice. "Get behind me," I ordered, positioning myself between her and the door. I quickly switched my phone from voice recording to video and held it ready. The front door banged open. "Amber, whose car is that outside?" Jake's voice echoed through the entryway. He stormed into the living room, freezing when he saw me. For a split second, surprise registered on his face before his features rearranged into a charming smile. "Megan, what an unexpected surprise. I thought you were in Chicago." I came to check on my sister, I replied evenly, phone recording his every move. His eyes narrowed at the device in my hand. Filming without consent is illegal in Massachusetts. You should know that. So is domestic abuse, I countered. Which one do you think the police will care about more? Jake's facade cracked, revealing the rage beneath. This is between me and my wife. You need to leave. Now. I'm not going anywhere without Amber. He laughed, a cold sound devoid of humor. Amber, tell your sister she's overreacting. Tell her about our agreement after that unfortunate incident at the wedding. Amber stepped out from behind me, visibly trembling but standing straighter than before. There's no agreement, Jake. I'm leaving. His expression darkened. After everything I've done for you, the connections I've given you, the lifestyle. He moved closer, looming over us both. No one walks away from me, especially not for some family drama with your pathetic sister. I kept filming as he grew more agitated, his true nature emerging fully, now that he had no audience to perform for. Think about what you're throwing away, he continued, focus entirely on Amber now. You think anyone else will want you after this? After the whole internet has seen what a mess you are. Stop, I interjected. You don't talk to her like that. Jake turned on me, stepping forward until he was inches from my face. You've been poisoning her against me from the beginning. You're jealous, you're bitter, and you're going to regret interfering in our marriage. The threat hung in the air between us. I refused to flinch, keeping my phone steady. Back off, I said quietly. Every word of this is being recorded. Give me that phone, he snarled, reaching for it. I stepped back, but he followed, grabbing my wrist hard enough to bruise. Amber screamed as I struggled to break free, managing to twist away just as a loud knocking came from the front door. Boston PD, open up. The color drained from Jake's face. Behind him, I could see our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, through the window, phone in hand, watching anxiously. Someone heard the commotion, I said, rubbing my wrist. Turns out your neighbors care more about Amber's safety than her own father did. 2 police officers entered after Amber opened the door, taking in the scene. Jake's aggressive stance, my phone still recording Amber's tearful face and visible bruise. We received a domestic disturbance call, the female officer said. Is everyone all right here? Before Jake could speak, I stepped forward. My sister needs protection from her husband. He's been abusing her, and he just assaulted me trying to take my phone. I showed them my wrist, already darkening with fingerprint bruises. Jake immediately shifted personas, becoming the calm, reasonable businessman. Officers, this is a family disagreement that's gotten out of hand. My sister-in-law is upset about a personal matter. He hit me at our wedding, Amber interrupted, voice stronger now. It's on video, everyone's seen it. And that wasn't the first time. The male officer looked at Jake. Sir, is there a restraining order against you currently? Jake stiffened. That's a completely unrelated matter that was resolved. That's a yes, the officer cut him off. Dispatch just confirmed an active order filed by Melissa Daniels. You're in violation by being within city limits of her residence. As the officers moved to detain Jake, he fixed Amber with a look of pure hatred. This isn't over, he hissed. You think you can just walk away? I made you. Without me, you're nothing. No, Amber replied as they led him away. Without you, I'm free. We watched from the doorway as Jake was placed in the police cruiser, neighbors emerging from surrounding homes to witness his disgrace. The same people who had seen Amber in designer clothes on Jake's arm now saw the truth behind the facade he'd created. When the police car pulled away, Amber collapsed against me, her entire body shaking with sobs. I held her tightly, my own tears flowing freely. It's over, I whispered into her hair. He can't hurt you anymore. But we both knew it wasn't that simple. The night ahead would be long, filled with police statements and evidence collection. The weeks to come would bring legal battles, restraining orders, divorce filings. The road to recovery would be arduous. But at least now Amber wouldn't walk it alone. As dawn broke over Boston, we sat together on her living room floor, surrounded by the few belongings she wanted to take from the life Jake had constructed. In the soft morning light, I could see glimpses of my sister returning. Determination in her eyes. Strength in her posture. Despite everything she'd endured. I don't know how to start over, she confessed, exhaustion evident in her voice. I took her hand, squeezing gently. You don't have to know right now. We'll figure it out together. For the first time in years, my sister smiled at me, a real smile that reached her eyes. Together, she repeated as if testing how the word felt after so long in isolation. "I'd like that." Amber moved into my Chicago apartment the next day, bringing only 2 suitcases of clothing and personal items. Everything else, she said, felt contaminated by Jake's presence. We flew back together, Amber, wearing large sunglasses and a baseball cap, to avoid recognition from the viral video that had now been viewed over 50 million times. The first few days were a delicate dance of relearning each other's rhythms. I worked from home to help Amber settle in, watching with concern, as she flinched at sudden noises, checked the locks repeatedly, and slept with the lights on. Jake's attempts to reclaim control began almost immediately. Flower deliveries arrived with cards expressing contrition and promises to change. Amber would stare at them, hands trembling, before asking me to throw them away. Then came the emails, the calls from unknown numbers, the messages through mutual friends. "He says he's in therapy," she told me one evening, staring at a text from Jake's mother. That it was a wake-up call. That he'll never touch me again. "And do you believe that?" I asked carefully. She was quiet for a long moment. "I want to. It would be easier, wouldn't it? To believe people can change overnight, that one public humiliation can erase years of private behavior." She deleted the message. "But I don't. Not anymore." With the help of a lawyer specializing in domestic violence cases, Amber filed for divorce and a permanent restraining order. Jake fought both, using his connections to delay proceedings and hire aggressive attorneys who painted Amber as unstable attention, seeking the true aggressor in their relationship. "They're saying I provoked him," she said after a particularly brutal legal meeting. "That I embarrassed him intentionally at the wedding to create drama." "And what does the video show?" I reminded her gently. "The truth," she whispered. "It shows the truth." The legal battle dragged on, but the unexpected silver lining came when one of Jake's ex-girlfriends, Melissa, reached out after seeing news coverage of the case. She had filed charges against Jake 2 years earlier for similar abuse, only to be pressured into dropping them by Jake's family. "I wish I'd been stronger," Melissa told us over coffee. "Maybe then you wouldn't have gone through this." "Or maybe I still would have," Amber replied. "People like Jake are good at making you doubt yourself, at isolating you from anyone who might see the truth." "Like I tried to do," I added quietly. Amber reached for my hand. "I should have listened to you." As spring turned to summer, Amber began rebuilding her life in Chicago. She found a therapist specializing in domestic abuse recovery. She joined a support group for survivors, eventually becoming a peer counselor. She cut ties with the friends who had chosen sides with Jake, reconnected with those who had tried to warn her. Our relationship healed through late-night conversations that stretched until dawn, peeling back layers of misunderstanding and hurt accumulated over years. We talked about our parents' divorce, the competition that had divided us, the resentments we'd nursed instead of addressed. "I was jealous of you," Amber admitted during one such conversation. "Everyone thought I had it all together, but you were always so unapologetically yourself." "I envied that freedom. And I envied your certainty," I confessed. "You always seemed to know exactly what you wanted." "Until Jake," she said softly. "He made me question everything I thought I knew about myself." In August, our father finally came to visit, awkward and uncertain of his welcome, after failing to protect Amber. He sat across from us at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, struggling to meet our eyes. "I should have seen it," he said finally. "At the very least, I should have listened when you tried to tell me Megan." "Why didn't you?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. He sighed heavily. "Jake reminded me of myself at that age. Ambitious, charismatic. I wanted to believe he was good for Amber because it was easier than admitting I might be wrong." He looked at Amber, eyes wet. "I failed you both after your mother left." "I'm so sorry." It wasn't an instant reconciliation. The damage done by years of emotional distance couldn't be repaired in a single conversation. But it was a beginning, a crack in the wall of silence our family had built around painful truths. By fall, Amber had found a job at a nonprofit organization working with domestic violence survivors, using her consulting background to help women rebuild their financial independence after leaving abusive partners. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. How her darkest experience had led her to meaningful work that might save others from similar pain. "It doesn't erase what happened," she told me, "but it gives it purpose." The divorce was finalized in October, after Jake's company board forced him to accept a settlement rather than continue dragging their name through the mud. He left Boston for California, his reputation in shambles despite his family's attempts to rehabilitate his image. That Thanksgiving, Amber and I hosted dinner at my apartment. A small gathering of friends who had become family. As we prepared the meal together, I marveled at the transformation in my sister. The haunted look had faded from her eyes, replaced by a quiet resilience. She laughed more easily now, stood taller, spoke with renewed confidence. "I've been thinking about Mom," she said as we set the table. "About inviting her for Christmas." I paused, surprised. "Are you ready for that?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I'm tired of broken relationships. Almost losing, you showed me how precious family is, even when it's complicated." After dinner, we built a fire in my small fireplace and gathered around it with mugs of hot cider. Someone suggested we each share something we were grateful for. When it was Amber's turn, she looked at me, eyes bright with unshed tears. "I'm grateful for second chances," she said, "and for a sister who never gave up on me even when I pushed her away." I reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. The journey had been painful, the wounds deep, but sitting there, surrounded by warmth and light, I knew we had found our way back to each other. Not as the girls we once were, but as the women we had become through fire and forgiveness. 1 year after the viral video changed our lives, Amber and I sat in my living room watching the snow fall over Chicago. She had moved into her own apartment 3 months earlier, a small but sunny place overlooking the lake, filled with plants and books and artwork she'd chosen herself. It was a space entirely her own, free from anyone else's influence or control. "Happy Liberation Day," I said, raising my wine glass in a toast. She smiled, clinking her glass against mine. "Is that what we're calling it now?" "Better than anniversary of my disastrous wedding going viral," I pointed out. Amber laughed, a full, genuine laugh that still surprised me sometimes after so many months of seeing her struggle. "Fair enough. To liberation, then." The year had been transformative for both of us. Amber had thrived in her role at the nonprofit, recently being promoted to program director. Her therapy continued, though now bi-weekly rather than twice weekly. The court-mandated restraining order against Jake had been made permanent after he violated the temporary one twice, resulting in a brief jail stay that finally seemed to convince him to keep his distance. My own life had changed too. Watching Amber rebuild herself from the ground up had inspired me to examine my own patterns. I'd started therapy, confronted my abandonment issues from our parents' divorce, begun setting healthier boundaries in my relationships. I'd even started dating someone new. A kind, respectful man who understood the importance of my relationship with my sister. "Did you see Jake's company filed for bankruptcy?" Amber asked, scrolling through her phone. "Good," I said firmly. "Couldn't happen to a nicer guy." After the video went viral, several of Jake's former partners had come forward with similar stories of abuse. Clients had pulled projects, investors had withdrawn support, and the empire he'd been so proud of had crumbled. Last we heard, he was working for his father's smaller development firm, kept on a tight leash away from public view. "Sometimes I still have nightmares," Amber admitted quietly, "not just about the physical stuff. About the way he got into my head, made me doubt everything I knew about myself and the people who loved me." "That's the most insidious part of abuse," I said. "The bruises heal faster than the psychological wounds." She nodded. "My therapist says it's like deprogramming from a cult. You have to relearn how to trust your own perceptions." "How are you doing with that?" "Better," she said thoughtfully. "I can recognize the voice in my head that sounds like him now, the one that says I'm worthless without him, that no one else will ever want me. I don't always believe it anymore." Our relationship had reached a new level of honesty over the past year. We'd confronted difficult truths about our family dynamics, our own roles, and the distance that had grown between us. We'd learned to communicate without the competitive edge that had once defined our interactions. "Mom called yesterday," Amber said. "She wants to visit next month." Our mother had re-entered our lives cautiously after learning about Jake's abuse. Her relationship with Dennis had ended, and she seemed genuinely interested in rebuilding connections with her daughters. It was complicated, imperfect, but slowly healing. "And how do you feel about that?" I asked. "Nervous. But ready, I think." She set her glass down. "This whole experience taught me something important about family. We're not perfect. We hurt each other, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. But real love means being willing to see those imperfections and stay anyway." Like how you put up with my terrible singing in the shower when you were living here, I teased. Exactly, she laughed. A true test of sisterly devotion. As evening deepened around us, we talked about the future. Amber was considering writing a book about her experience, hoping to help other women recognize the warning signs she had missed. I was thinking about going back to school for a master's degree, something I'd always wanted but never prioritized. Do you ever wonder how things might have been different? Amber asked. If you had been at the wedding, if I had listened to you sooner. Sometimes, I admitted. But then I think maybe we needed to go through all of it to get here. Maybe we wouldn't have truly reconnected if we hadn't almost lost each other completely. That's a generous way to look at trauma, she observed, with a small smile. I'm just saying sometimes the worst experiences bring clarity about what really matters. And what mattered, we had both learned, wasn't perfection or appearances or living up to others' expectations. It was honesty, authenticity, the courage to be vulnerable with the people who had earned our trust, the wisdom to walk away from those who abused it. As we sat together in comfortable silence, I thought about all the women watching this video, perhaps recognizing their own relationships in our story. Maybe some were questioning behaviors they'd been told were normal, recognizing red flags they'd been conditioned to ignore. Maybe others were gathering the courage to reach out to estranged loved ones to rebuild bridges that had seemed permanently burned. Amber, I said suddenly, what would you say to someone watching this who might be where you were a year ago? She considered the question carefully. I'd tell them that love doesn't hurt. It doesn't isolate you or make you smaller or more afraid. Real love, whether from a partner, a friend, or a sister, gives you space to be yourself, all of yourself, even the messy parts. She reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. And I'd tell them it's never too late to start over. The hardest step is the first one, admitting something is wrong. But you're stronger than you think, and you don't have to do it alone. I looked at my sister, my beautiful, resilient sister who had walked through fire and emerged not unscathed but undefeated. The journey wasn't over. Healing rarely follows a straight line. But watching her reclaim herself day by day had been the greatest privilege of my life. So to everyone watching this video, I ask you, is there someone in your life you've lost touch with who might need you right now? Or maybe you're the one who needs to reach out to admit you need help. Drop a comment below sharing one step you'll take today to reconnect with someone important to you. Like and subscribe if this story touched you, and share it with anyone who might need to hear that second chances are possible, that healing can happen, that broken relationships can sometimes be the strongest ones once they've been carefully, lovingly repaired. Thank you for listening to our story. Remember, true strength isn't never falling. It's having the courage to get back up, and sometimes to help someone else do the same.